A life without regret is a life well lived. A lot of people would agree with this quote, and I did too. I very much lived my teens and mid 20s with this YOLO, no regrets attitude. In fact, I used to say, I don't have any regrets because every decision that I've made up to this point, good or bad, have shaped me into the person I am today. I lived my life by this motto up until a few years ago when my YOLO attitude was killed by none other than a bad relationship. If you know, you know if you have also been in a bad relationship. During that relationship, I accumulated more regrets than I had in my entire life up to that point, and I did not know how to cope with this. I seriously thought that I was going to be consumed by that regret for the rest of my life. Well, it's been a few years now, and that regret does not consume me at all. And in fact, it's actually improved my life in really important ways. And in this video, I wanted to share with you how I got to the other side of that regret in the hopes that it might benefit you if you're also struggling with a regret of your own. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Audrey. It's very nice to meet you. I'm currently practicing as a therapist, and on this channel, we talk about tools to improve our relationships, work life, and overall mental health. Now, before we get into the video, I did want to mention that yes, I am a therapist, and I do have many people that I work with come to me struggling with regret. However, I do not want to present this video as a prescriptive how to therapize regret because I hate unsolicited advice. Instead, my intention with this video is to share my story of how I overcame one of the biggest regrets of my life in the hopes that some of you might find it helpful. So first, let's have some tea. What exactly is this big regret of mine? Not me about to expose myself on the internet. Coming out of that relationship, I felt so much shame about the mistreatment that I continually tolerated in that relationship, especially the yelling. The first time it happened, I practiced boundary setting and I stated firmly that I will not tolerate being yelled at by my partner. And this person responded well, actually. They apologized, they expressed remorse, and they said they would never do it again. But they did. And I honestly don't even hold it against them for doing it again after they said they wouldn't. I held it against myself for allowing it, especially after I had stated a firm boundary. And I came out of that relationship having lost a lot of trust in myself and my ability to make good decisions in relationships. It was not a cute time, okay? Now, the reason I feel okay sharing this very vulnerable story on the internet is, well, one, I'm over it now. I've processed it and I've healed. If I was still in the healing process, I definitely would not be sharing this on the internet. And also because I'm sure I am not the only person in the world who regrets accepting mistreatment in a relationship. And I have a feeling that hearing my story will make some of you out there feel less alone. Looking back, I can see that I went through 6 different phases with this regret. Phase 1 being the holy shit phase. This is that initial shock phase that happens immediately after you realize you made a big mistake, where your stomach just drops and you're just like, holy shit, what have I done? Now, this phase was painful, but I think phase 2 was even worse. The wallowing phase. This was when I was dwelling on my regret and beating myself up for it and being totally consumed by self-blame. And also, I wasn't really getting anywhere new with my thoughts. I was just ruminating. It was very unproductive. Thankfully, I did eventually get sick of feeling like that, and I entered phase 3, the research phase. Whenever I'm dealing with a negative emotion that I don't know what to do with, my go-to strategy is to go to the experts. In this case, I thought, I wonder what Brene Brown says about regret. And so I literally Googled Brene Brown regret, and I came across one of her podcast episodes with an author named Daniel Pink. The title was The Power of Regret, and I saw it, was like, I want to know what the power of regret is, and so I listened to it, and this is what I learned. According to Daniel Pink, regret happens when we have a story in our mind about the past, and then we imagine a new story of what could have been had we made different decisions in the past, and then when we compare these two versions of our lives and we like the imagined one better, that's when we feel regret. We feel a sense of grief and loss, knowing that we are the cause of our current situation that we don't like because we had the chance to make different choices and we didn't take it. And there can be a lot of self-blame associated with this. I also learned that there are two different types of regret. There are regrets of action, where you regret something that you did, and there are regrets of inaction, where you regret something that you didn't do. And apparently, regrets of inaction are much more common than regrets of action. Daniel Pink created what he called the World Regret Survey, where he collected regrets from 19,000 people around the world. And what he found was that by far, people regret what they didn't do more than what they did do, even when what they did do didn't work out as they had hoped. And Brene Brown calls these regrets of inaction regrets of courage. Now, at the time that I was listening to this podcast, that sounded great and all, and I believed it, but I was also kind of annoyed because I did not see how this information could apply to me and help me get over my regret. I was kind of like, okay, so confirmed, I had a regret of courage. Other people have had regrets of courage too. And so honestly, I kind of rage quit that episode at this point. But I did pick it up a few days later, and this is what I learned the second time around. Whether you're struggling with a regret of action or inaction, regret is a normal and universal part of being human. It's actually a sign of a healthy brain. Apparently, the only people that don't feel regret are 5-year-olds whose brains haven't fully developed yet, sociopaths, and people with acute brain injury. So if you have regrets, congratulations, you are normal and healthy. Studies also show that regret is one of the most common negative emotions that we feel. And the reason for this, the reason that regret is a thing and it's so ubiquitous, is because it's useful. According to this podcast, each of our regrets carries an important message that helps us survive better in the world. Each regret is trying to teach us something about what we value and what matters most to us in life. And when we are aware of what we value, we can use this information to make better decisions and maybe make some necessary changes in our life so that we can live a more meaningful and fulfilling life. This also means that regret has a trade-off. It has a potentially life-altering message in it, but you have to feel the pain to be able to access that message. If you invite the discomfort in, you will benefit, but you have to go through that discomfort. There's no way getting around it. Brene Brown also mentioned in the podcast that regret is a fair but tough teacher. It's a teacher that has your best interest in mind, and so for that reason, they're gonna grade you pretty ruthlessly because they believe in you, not because they're mean. Making a mistake and then regretting that we made a mistake and then as a result doing better next time is just how we learn and grow as humans. Not gonna lie, I really struggled with this information at first. I was like,
I don't want any more learning experiences. I don't want any more growth or life lessons. I just want to not feel so shitty anymore.
And so I shelved this information for a while. I didn't do anything with it. I didn't reflect or try to find a life lesson because I was still not ready to feel that discomfort. And for the next month, I entered phase 4, the avoidance phase. This is a very common phase that people go through when they're dealing with regret. For a reason, it's just human nature to avoid things that feel painful. The thing is though, that the longer you avoid something, the stronger and louder it gets, and it ends up just consuming you even more. And studies even show that avoiding stuff actually makes anxiety and depression worse, not better like we might think. The truth is that suppressing and avoiding your emotions doesn't make them go away entirely. It just pushes them down temporarily, only for them to come back with a vengeance later on. As a therapist, I knew this in theory, okay, but in practice, when it came to myself and my own emotions, it wasn't as easy. But eventually, luckily, I did also get sick of feeling like this, and I took myself to therapy, and that is when I entered phase 5, the processing phase. I was actually really taken aback by how relieving it felt to just tell someone else about my regret. It was like this massive weight was lifted off my chest. And finally letting it out also made me realize that I was carrying my regret around as if it was this burdensome, deep, dark secret, which it really did not have any business having that much importance. Talking about it also helped me to make sense of my regret and understand where I was coming from when I made that decision in that moment. And what I learned was that it was because as a child, I had become so accustomed to being yelled at by my Asian parents and just taking it. I wasn't allowed to say to my parents,
I don't like it when you yell at me. Don't do that.
I think a lot of my fellow Asians out there will understand just how comically ridiculous that would be. And so I carried that expectation about relationships that I learned in childhood into my adult relationships, as one does according to attachment theory. Having this deeper understanding of myself allowed me to be a lot gentler on myself about my mistake instead of being critical and judgmental and beating myself up for it. And having this empathy for my past self allowed me to forgive that version of me. And once I was able to do that, honestly, a big part of the healing was done. But of course, the process of healing from any painful experience is not complete until we find the lesson in it. Yes, I did eventually get over myself, and I listened to Daniel Pink and Brene Brown, and with the help of therapy, I identified the lesson. That lesson was that this shame that I was feeling for allowing a partner to treat me like that is actually a good sign, because it means that I'm not okay with being treated like that. And in the next relationship, I will not allow it again, and I will do things differently now that I know how bad it feels to allow it. Going through this whole process of processing my regret really helped me to internalize what I had learned from Daniel Pink and Brene Brown that I was previously resistant to, that regret is a good thing. It's protective. It prevents us from making the same mistake again in the future. And for that reason, we shouldn't be aiming to get rid of our regret entirely, because that would mean that we would just have to start all over again. Instead, it's actually a good idea to carry a little bit of that regret around with us, because it's going to help us to make better choices next time. And with that, the worst part was over, and I entered phase 6, acceptance and healing. This was when I got to apply that lesson in my next relationship experiences. And I am now very proud to say that I have successfully been able to remove myself from relationships where I wasn't being treated in a way that felt good to me. And I don't know if I would have been able to do that, or maybe I wouldn't have been able to do that as decisively as I did had I not gone through that whole process. I was able to show myself that I am capable of making good decisions in relationships, which restored a lot of the trust that I had previously lost of myself in my decision-making ability in relationships. And with that, my healing was complete. Yes, we made it. I am now at a point where I can say that I'm really glad I went through that experience despite how hard it was, because I am much better off having gone through it. I am wiser, I am more equipped to deal with future regret, and I am also more equipped to support the people that I work with through their regrets of their own, having gone through that process myself. This experience has also changed my mind about this whole no regrets thing. I actually don't think anymore that having no regrets is something to be proud of. I don't wish to live a life with no regrets anymore, because I've experienced how valuable regrets can be. I would have missed out big time had I not processed that regret all the way through. And because Brene Brown can articulate this better than anyone, I will leave you with one of her quotes from her book, Atlas of the Heart. No regrets has become synonymous with daring and adventure, but I disagree. The idea of no regrets doesn't mean living with courage. It means living life without reflection. To live without regret is to believe you have nothing to learn, no amends to make, and no opportunity to be braver with your life. I would love if you could leave a comment sharing if you've done anything else that worked to help you process and heal from a regret of your own, so that we can all learn from each other. Also, if you are looking for more support on how to use your own experience to make better decisions, I'd recommend checking out this video next, where I go through an exercise that helps you do just that. But in any case, as always, I hope you're doing well, and I will see you next time. Bye.